Welcome to Stories Junction. Let's begin today's story. My name is Daniel, and I'm here to tell you how I gave my wife the break she said she needed, even though it unraveled everything we'd built together. Some might say I moved too quickly. Others might argue I did what was necessary. Either way, there's something to learn from what happened. Let me be upfront. Ending a marriage isn't something you walk away from with a grin. It's not a victory lap. No one comes out on top when two people who once swore to face life side by side end up walking away alone. But when someone you love tells you they need space or time to think, you've got to stop and wonder, what's holding us together at all? If they're asking for a break from you, maybe they've already drifted further than you realized. People toss around the word break like it's just hitting pause, but in my experience, it's more like the opening line of a goodbye. I listened to what she said, and it gave her exactly what she asked for. What happened next? That's when things took a turn I didn't see coming. I've been a deal maker since I left university with a degree in economics. I started a logistics company specializing in shipping goods across borders. It's the kind of work that keeps you on your toes. One day you're in London, the next you're in Tokyo or Sao Paulo. It's a demanding life, not just for me, but for anyone who chooses to share it. I met Elise, my now ex-wife, during one of those whirlwind trips. We were both stranded at an airport in Frankfurt, waiting out a storm that grounded every flight. She was sitting across from me in the lounge, both of us glued to our phones, pretending the delay wasn't driving us up the wall. Then a waiter dropped off a tray of sad-looking sandwiches, and I caught her eye as we both smirked at the soggy bread. Think they're trying to starve us, or just bore us to death? I said, and she laughed. That broke the ice. We started talking, and it was easier than it should have been with a stranger. She listened when I spoke, asked questions that showed she was actually paying attention. By the time the storm cleared and we boarded our flight, it felt like we'd known each other for years. We swapped numbers, but I didn't expect much to come of it. My life was a blur of time zones and contracts. I met people all the time, and most faded into the background. But Elise didn't. Something about her stayed with me. Even with my schedule packed to the brim, I found myself texting her when I landed in a new city, calling when I had a spare moment. When I was back in Chicago, where we both lived, I'd ask her to grab dinner or drinks. Over months, then years, we built something real. I was honest with her from the start about what my life entailed. The constant travel, the late-night calls with suppliers in different hemispheres, the stress of navigating tariffs and regulations. It wasn't a picket fence kind of existence. Elise didn't just nod and accept it. She seemed to admire it. She liked that I was ambitious, that I didn't fold when things got tough. She'd tell me she respected how I kept pushing, no matter the obstacles. In return, I was drawn to her warmth, her ability to stay grounded even when my world felt like it was spinning too fast. I did my best to show her she mattered. I'd send flowers when I was stuck in some far-off city, plan surprise weekends when I could steal a few days, even fly her out to join me when my schedule allowed. I wasn't always there, but I made sure she knew I wanted to be. She seemed to understand, or so I thought. After 3 years of dating, I knew I wanted her to be my wife. We'd weathered enough, missed birthdays, rescheduled plans, weeks apart, that I felt we could handle anything. So, I proposed on a quiet evening in Chicago, by the lakefront where we'd had our first real date. She said yes, and for a moment, it felt like the chaos of my life finally made sense. We got married in a small ceremony, surrounded by family and a few close friends. At that point, my company was doing well, not private jet wealthy, but solid enough that we didn't have to worry about bills. More importantly, I decided to scale back. I'd spent years chasing deals, and now I wanted to chase moments with Elise instead. I cut down on trips, delegated more to my team, and stayed home longer. For the first time, I was present, not just physically, but emotionally. We'd cook dinner together, take walks through the city, talk about things that didn't involve logistics or deadlines. Those early years of marriage felt like a reward for all the hustle. Life was good, or at least it looked that way. But business has a way of pulling you back in. It doesn't care about your wedding vows or your plans for a quiet weekend. Just when I thought I'd found a rhythm, the industry started shifting. New trade policies, supply chain disruptions, competitors popping up, It was like the ground moved beneath me. If I wanted to keep the company afloat, I had to step up. That meant more trips, especially to Europe and Southeast Asia, where our biggest clients were. I sat Elise down one night and laid it out. This isn't forever, I told her. But right now, the business needs me. These deals, they're make or break. If I don't show up, we could lose everything I've built. Everything we've built. I promised I'd find a way to balance it, that I'd make it up to her. She nodded, but I could see the worry in her eyes. I told myself it was just a phase, that we'd get through it like we always had. But deep down, I knew something was starting to crack. The cracks in our marriage didn't show up all at once. They crept in slowly, like shadows stretching across a room as the day wears on. I was back to long flights and longer meetings, trying to keep the business from slipping through my fingers. Elise was home in Chicago, holding down the fort, but I could feel her patience thinning every time we talked. While I'd call from some hotel room in Singapore or Brussels, her voice didn't have the same warmth it used to. She'd ask how my day was, but it felt more like courtesy than curiosity. I'd tell myself she was just tired, that we'd sort it out when I got back. But the truth was, I was starting to wonder if I was losing her, or if I'd already lost her and just hadn't admitted it. I tried to make up for the distance in every way I could. I'd send her little gifts, a scarf from market in Hanoi, a book I'd found in a London shop, hoping they'd remind her I was thinking of her. Sometimes I'd book us a weekend away, even if it meant flying straight from a business trip to meet her somewhere like Montreal or Miami. Those moments felt like hitting the reset button. We'd laugh, hold hands, talk about the future like we were still the same two people who met in that airport lounge. But as soon as I left again, the connection would fray. It was like trying to hold water in your hands. No matter how tightly you grip, it slips away. The tension started to bubble up in small ways at first. Elise would mention things I'd missed. A friend's dinner party, a family event, or even just a quiet night she'd wanted to spend together. "You're never here, Daniel," she'd say, her voice sharp but not quite angry. "I'm doing this alone." I'd listen, nod, try to explain. "I know it's hard," I'd tell her. "I get how it feels like I'm always gone. But this is for us. The business, it's what keeps us secure. If I don't stay on top of it, we could lose everything." She'd look at me, her eyes searching for something I wasn't sure I could give. I promised to do better, to cut back again once things stabilized. But the business wasn't slowing down, and neither was the strain between us. It wasn't just her words that told me something was wrong. It was the silence, too. When I'd come home after a trip, the house felt different, quieter, like it was holding its breath. Elise would greet me with a hug, but it was quick, perfunctory. We'd sit down for dinner, and the conversation would stall. I'd ask about her day, her work at the nonprofit she loved, but her answers were short, like she didn't have the energy to share. I'd tell myself it was just a rough patch, that every marriage has them. I'd see my parents go through their own storms and come out stronger. But deep down, I knew this wasn't the same. Something was shifting, and I wasn't sure how to stop it. The tipping point came when I was gearing up for a major trip to Jakarta. This wasn't just another meeting. It was a chance to lock in a partnership that could take the company to a new level. If it went well, it'd mean more stability, maybe even the chance to step back for real this time. I needed Elise to understand why I had to go. So, a few days before I left, I sat her down in our living room. The city lights sparkled through the window, but the mood inside was heavy. "Elise," I said, leaning forward, "this trip is huge. If I can close this deal, it'll change things for us. Not just the business, but our life. I know it's been tough, but I'm doing this for our future." She sat there, arms crossed, staring at the coffee table like it held the answers I didn't. I kept going, trying to bridge the gap. "I'll be back in 2 weeks, and then we'll plan something, just us. I promise." She didn't respond right away. When she finally looked at me, her eyes were tired, not angry, just exhausted. "You always say that, Daniel," she said quietly. "You promise it'll get better, but it doesn't. I'm here, waiting, while you're out there living your life. I don't know how much longer I can do this." Her words hit like a punch I didn't see coming. I wanted to argue, to tell her she wasn't being fair, but part of me knew she was right. I've been asking her to wait for a version of me that could stay still, and I hadn't delivered. Still, I couldn't let the deal slip. "I hear you," I said. reaching for her hand. She didn't pull away, but she didn't hold on either. Just give me this one trip. I'll make it right. She nodded, but it wasn't agreement. It was resignation. I left for Jakarta the next day, carrying the weight of that conversation with me. The trip was grueling. What should have been a straightforward negotiation turned into a maze of revisions, delays, and last-minute demands. I was in meetings from dawn to midnight, juggling calls with my team back in Chicago and trying to keep the clients happy. Every night, I'd collapse onto the hotel bed, staring at the ceiling, wondering how things had gotten so complicated. I texted Elise when I could, small messages to keep the connection alive. Miss you, I'd write, or can't wait to be home. Sometimes she'd reply with a quick me too, but other times there was nothing. I told myself she was busy, that she was still upset, but we'd work through it. I clung to the idea that if I could just get through this trip, I'd have the leverage to slow down, to fix what was breaking. As the trip stretched into its second week, I started planning my return. Our 5th wedding anniversary was coming up, and I'd promised myself I wouldn't miss it. I booked a dinner at Elise's favorite restaurant, a little Italian place where we'd gone on our first anniversary. I even ordered a necklace from a jeweler in Jakarta, something simple but elegant, to show her I was still in this. Before I boarded my flight home, I texted her, just landed in Singapore for my connection. Be home tomorrow for our anniversary. Love you. I stared at my phone, waiting for a reply, but none came. I boarded the plane anyway, telling myself she'd be there when I got back, that we'd find our way through this. When I landed in Chicago, I checked my phone again, hoping for something, anything, to ease the knot in my stomach. There was a message, but it wasn't what I expected. Elise's words stared back at me, cold and final. Daniel, I need a break. I don't know what I want anymore, but I can't keep going like this. I read it again, then a third time, as if the words might rearrange themselves into something else. A break? After everything we'd been through, everything I was trying to build for us, I stood there in the airport, people rushing past me, and felt the ground shift. She wasn't just asking for space. She was telling me she was already halfway out the door. Standing in the Chicago airport, staring at Elise's message, I felt like the world had slowed to a crawl. I need a break. I don't know what I want anymore, but I can't keep going like this. The words looped in my head, each one heavier than the last. I'd just flown halfway across the world, juggling a high-stakes deal and a promise to be home for our anniversary. And this was what greeted me. A break. It wasn't just a request. It was a declaration, a line drawn in the sand. I wanted to call her, to demand an explanation, but something stopped me. Maybe it was exhaustion, or maybe it was the realization that arguing wouldn't change what she'd already decided. Instead, I typed a reply, my fingers steady despite the storm in my chest. Okay. One word, simple and final. Then I turned off my phone and walked out of the terminal. I didn't go home. The thought of walking into our house, seeing her there pretending everything was fine, it was too much. Instead, I told the driver to take me to a hotel downtown. As the city blurred past the car window, I replayed everything. The years we'd spent building a life, the promises we'd made, the way I tried to balance my work with her needs. I cut back when we got married, stayed home more, but the business had pulled me back in. I told her it was temporary, that I was doing it for us, but maybe she'd stopped believing me. Or maybe she'd stopped wanting the life we had. Either way, her message wasn't a question. It was an answer. She was done, and I wasn't going to beg her to stay. At the hotel, I checked in and sat on the edge of the bed, staring at the skyline. Chicago's lights glittered like they always did, indifferent to the mess I was in. I pulled out my phone and called someone I hadn't spoken to in months. My lawyer, Marcus. It was late, but he picked up, his voice calm and professional. Daniel, what's going on? I didn't waste time with small talk. I told him about Elise's message, about the anniversary I'd rushed home for, about the way she'd blindsided me. I want you to start preparing divorce papers, I said. She wants a break, so I'm giving her one permanently. Marcus didn't flinch. He'd handled enough high-pressure situations to know when to just listen. You sure about this? He asked. It's a big step. I nodded, even though he couldn't see me. I'm sure. She made her choice. Now I'm making mine. I wasn't angry, not yet. What I felt was clearer, colder. I'd spent years building a business, a life, a marriage, and I'd done it with intention. I'd given Elise everything I could, even when it meant stretching myself thin. If she couldn't see that, if she needed to figure out what she wanted without me, then I wasn't going to stand in her way. But I also wasn't going to let her string me along. I told Marcus to move fast, to have the papers ready as soon as possible. Include a notice for her to vacate the house. I added, 2 weeks. It sounded harsh, even to me, but I meant it. If she wanted space, she could have all of it, starting now. 2 days later, Marcus called to confirm the papers were drafted. He'd worked with a colleague to make sure everything was airtight, property, assets, the works. I'd been careful over the years, structuring my finances to protect what I'd built. The business was in my name, but the profits were funneled into trusts and holdings that weren't easily touched. Our house, the cars, even our savings, it was all tied up in ways that made a messy divorce less likely. I hadn't done it to screw Elise over. I'd done it because I knew how quickly things could unravel, in business or in life. Now, that foresight was paying off. Marcus arranged for the papers to be served at the house that afternoon. I didn't go with him. I stayed at the hotel, working through emails, pretending my world wasn't coming apart. Elise's reaction was instant. My phone lit up with texts before Marcus even called to confirm the delivery. "Daniel, what is this?" her first message read. "Divorce papers? Are you serious?" Then another, "We need to talk. This isn't what I meant." I didn't respond. What was there to say? She'd asked for a break, and I'd given her one, the kind that didn't leave room for ambiguity. When she called, I let it go to voicemail. Her voice was shaky, pleading. "Daniel, please, call me back. I didn't think you'd do this." I listened to the message once, then deleted it. I wasn't interested in backtracking. She'd made a choice, and I'd made mine. If she thought I'd sit around waiting for her to figure things out, she didn't know me at all. That night, I sat in the hotel bar, nursing a whiskey I barely tasted. Part of me wondered if I'd gone too far, too fast. Maybe I should have talked to her, given her a chance to explain. But every time I started down that road, I remembered her message. It wasn't just about needing space. It was about needing something I couldn't give her, or maybe something she didn't want from me anymore. I'd spent years trying to be enough, and I was done chasing someone who was already walking away. Still, the weight of it all settled in. Our marriage wasn't perfect, but it was ours. Now it was ending, and I wasn't sure what came next. The next day, Elise texted again, this time with a different tone. "You can't just throw me out of my own house, Daniel. This is my life, too." I read it and felt a flicker of guilt, but it didn't last. The house, the life we'd built, it was tied to the business, to the choices I'd made long before she came along. I'd worked for it, bled for it, and I wasn't going to let it slip away just because she'd changed her mind about us. I replied, keeping it short. "You wanted a break. I'm giving you one. The papers are clear." After that, I turned off notifications and focused on work. There was a deal in Berlin I'd put on hold to come home for our anniversary. I told my team to get it back on track. If Elise didn't want this life, I wasn't going to stop living it. Marcus called later that week to update me. Elise had contacted a lawyer of her own, but it didn't sound like she had much to stand on. "She's upset, but she's not fighting the divorce itself," he said. "She's asking about the house, the timeline. I think she's realizing how this is going to play out." I nodded, staring out the hotel window. "Good," I said. "Keep me posted." I didn't feel triumphant, just tired. I'd given Elise everything I thought she wanted, and it hadn't been enough. Now I was giving her what she'd asked for, and it felt like the only way to move forward. The days after serving Elise the divorce papers felt like moving through fog. I stayed at the hotel, burying myself in work to keep my mind from wandering back to her texts, her voicemails, the life we'd had. My team was pushing forward with the Berlin deal, and I threw myself into the details, spreadsheets, contracts, anything to anchor me. But no matter how many emails I answered or calls I took, Elise's words lingered. "I need a break." I kept telling myself I'd done the right thing, that I'd given her what she wanted. Still, a small part of me wondered if I'd been too quick to pull the trigger, if I should have given her a chance to explain. That doubt gnawed at me, quiet but persistent, until something else came to light that changed everything. Elise didn't stop reaching out. Her messages shifted from shock to desperation, then to something almost like regret. "Daniel, this isn't what I wanted," she wrote one morning. "Can we just talk? You don't have to do this." Another time, she called, leaving a voicemail that sounded like she'd been crying. "I didn't mean for it to end like this. Please, let's figure it out." I listened to each one, but I didn't reply. Her words felt hollow, like they were coming from someone who'd already made up their mind and was only now seeing the cost. I'd spent years trying to hold us together, rearranging my life to make room for her, and she'd thrown it back in my face with a single text. I wasn't going to let her pull me back in just because she was scared of what came next. But there was something about her insistence that didn't sit right. It wasn't just guilt or fear. It was like she was hiding something, covering for a choice she didn't want me to see. I couldn't shake the feeling that her break wasn't about needing space to think. It was about something or someone else. The thought had crossed my mind before, but I'd pushed it away, not wanting to believe it. Now, with the divorce papers served and her life upended, I couldn't ignore it. So, I did what I'd always done in business when I needed answers. I dug. I didn't hire a private investigator or anything dramatic like that. I just started paying attention. I checked her social media, something I rarely did because I'd always trusted her. Her posts were sparse, mostly photos of Chicago sunsets or vague quotes about finding yourself. But there were patterns, likes from the same guy, a name I didn't recognize, showing up more than once. I asked a mutual friend, casually, if they'd seen Elise lately. "Oh, she's been hanging out with some new people," they said, mentioning a bar she'd gone to while I was in Jakarta. The friend didn't know much, but it was enough to make me curious. I called Marcus and asked him to look into it discreetly. "Nothing crazy," I told him. "Just see if there's anything I should know." A few days later, Marcus called me back. "You're not going to like this," he said, his voice low. He didn't go into details over the phone, but he sent me a report. It wasn't long, but it was enough. Elise had been seeing someone, a co-worker from her nonprofit, someone she'd mentioned in passing months ago. They'd been spotted together multiple times while I was away, at dinners at that bar my friend mentioned. There were no photos, no smoking gun, but the timeline matched. She'd been pulling away long before she sent that text, building a life that didn't include me. I sat there, staring at the report, and felt the last piece of doubt vanish. This wasn't about my travel or the business. It was about her choosing someone else. I didn't confront her right away. I let it sit, let the truth settle in. When she texted again, asking to meet, I finally responded. "You wanted a break, Elise," I wrote. "I'm giving you what you asked for. But let's not pretend this is just about space. I know about him. I didn't name a guy I didn't need to." The message was clear. Her reply came fast, a string of denials. "What are you talking about? There's no one else. You're jumping to conclusions." But the panic in her words gave her away. She wasn't just fighting for the house or the lifestyle. She was fighting to keep her story straight. I didn't answer. There was nothing left to say. I called Marcus and told him to push forward with the divorce, no delays. "She's got 2 weeks to move out," I said. "Make sure she understands." He didn't argue, just confirmed he'd handle it. I also told him to double-check the asset protections we'd put in place years ago. The business, the house, the investments, they were all shielded, not because I planned to divorce her, but because I'd learned early on to cover my bases. Elise might try to fight for a piece of it, but she'd find out quickly that there wasn't much to take. The cars were leased through the company, the house was in a trust, and our joint account held less than she probably thought. I wasn't trying to be cruel, just practical. She'd made her choice, and I wasn't going to subsidize it. Elise's lawyer reached out to Marcus a day later, asking for a meeting to discuss terms. I didn't go. I told Marcus to handle it, to make it clear that the papers weren't negotiable. She could take a small settlement, enough to get her started, but the house and everything tied to the business were off the table. "She's not happy," Marcus told me after. "She's saying you're being unfair, that she deserves more after 5 years. I shook my head. "She deserved a husband who showed up," I said. "She got that. What she didn't deserve was a free pass to walk away and take half my life with her." Marcus didn't push back. He knew I was done. By the end of the week, Elise's messages stopped. Maybe she'd realized there was no point, Or maybe she was too busy figuring out her next move. Either way, the silence was louder than her pleas had been. I checked out of the hotel and rented a short-term apartment across town, somewhere I could think without the ghosts of our old life hanging over me. I didn't go back to the house. I couldn't. Not yet. I pictured her packing, sorting through the things we'd bought together, the memories we'd made. It hurt, but not as much as I'd expected. The betrayal had hardened something in me, turned sadness into resolve. She'd wanted a break, and I'd given her one. Now it was time to let go. The 2 weeks I'd given Elise to move out passed faster than I expected. I didn't hear much from her directly, just updates from Marcus, who confirmed she'd vacated the house on time. Her lawyer had tried to negotiate a bigger settlement, but when they saw how tightly I'd locked down the assets, they backed off. The divorce wasn't final yet, but the papers were signed, and the process was moving forward. I stayed in the rented apartment, avoiding our old home. I wasn't ready to walk through those rooms, to see the spaces where we'd laughed, fought, planned a future that no longer existed. Instead, I focused on the business, diving back into the Berlin deal and lining up new clients. Work was the one thing I could control, the one place where I still felt like myself. I don't want to paint myself as the hero here or the victim. What happened between Elise and me wasn't a one-sided tragedy. It took both of us to make the marriage, and both of us to break it. I wasn't blind to my part in it. The business demanded too much, pulled me away when she needed me close. I promised her a balance I couldn't always deliver, and over time, that wore her down. I saw the signs, her quiet resentment, her fading warmth, but I kept thinking we'd get through it. That love and effort would be enough. Maybe if I'd stepped back sooner, cut a few trips, we'd have had a chance. But Elise didn't just drift away. She chose to step outside our marriage, to find someone else while I was still fighting for us. That's where the line was drawn, and once she crossed it, there was no going back. The truth about her affair didn't just hurt, it clarified things. Her break wasn't about needing time to think. It was about exploring a life where I wasn't the center. I didn't confront her about it again after that one text. There was no point. She denied it, but the evidence was clear, and her panic confirmed it. Knowing she betrayed me didn't make me feel righteous. It made me feel foolish for trusting her as long as I did. I'd built a life around us, around the idea that we were a team, and she'd walked away without a backward glance. That's what stung the most. Not the loss of her, but the loss of what I thought we had. Looking back, I learned things I wish I'd known sooner. First, when someone asks for a break, it's never as simple as it sounds. It's not just space thereafter. It's a way out, a test run for a life without you. If Elise had been honest about what she wanted, maybe we could have ended things cleanly, without the mess. But she wasn't, and I didn't push for the truth until it was too late. Second, I learned to protect what matters. Not just your heart, but what you've built. I'd structured my finances carefully, not because I distrusted her, but because I knew life could turn on a dime. That foresight saved me from a drawn-out legal battle, from losing everything I'd worked for. It wasn't about punishing her. It was about preserving what was mine. The hardest lesson, though, was about letting go. I loved Elise, even when things got tough. I rearranged my life to make her happy, scaled back the business when we got married, rushed home for our anniversary because I thought it mattered. But love isn't enough if the other person stops choosing you. I could have fought for her, begged her to stay, but what would that have gotten me? A marriage with someone who'd already checked out? I'd rather walk away than chase a ghost. And maybe the biggest takeaway of all, you can't sacrifice your purpose for someone who doesn't respect it. The business wasn't just my job. It was my drive, my way of building a future. Elise wanted me to give it up, to be someone I wasn't, and when I didn't, she found someone who fit her vision instead. That's on her, not me. A few weeks after she moved out, I finally went back to the house. It was quieter than I remembered, the air heavy with absence. Her things were gone. Her books, her clothes, the little decorations she'd picked out. The space felt both familiar and foreign, like a memory I couldn't quite place. I walked through each room, expecting to feel something bigger, grief, anger, maybe relief, but it was just empty. I sat on the couch where we'd watched movies, planned trips, argued about nothing, and realized I wasn't mourning her anymore. I was mourning the version of me who thought we'd last forever. That guy was gone, and I was okay with it. I sold the house a month later. It wasn't about erasing her. It was about moving forward. I bought a new place, a smaller condo downtown with a view of the lake. It's just me now, and that's enough. The business is thriving. The Berlin deal closed, and I'm planning a trip to Seoul for the next one. I don't feel weighed down anymore, like I'm carrying someone else's expectations. For the first time in years, I'm free to be who I am, not who I'm supposed to be for someone else. I don't hate Elise. I don't wish her ill. I hope she finds whatever she was looking for, even if it's with the guy she chose over me. But I'm not part of her story anymore, and that's okay. Life doesn't stop when a marriage ends. It just changes. I'm still figuring out what that change looks like, but I'm not afraid of it. I've built things before, businesses, dreams, a home. I'll build again. So, I'll leave you with this. What would you have done in my place? Would you have quit the business to keep her, hoping it'd be enough? Would you have sent the papers like I did? Or try to talk it out? Would you have taken her back if she'd begged? I'm curious to hear your thoughts, because even now, I wonder if there was another way. But for me, this was the only path that made sense. I gave her the break she asked for, and in doing it, I found my own.